Hello again. Welcome to the show. Like many of you, as a kid, my happy place was a toy store or just a toy aisle. Commonly, I was left there, not by neglect, but because it was a safe place where my mom could then go shopping. Sometimes I would just find myself meandering into the girls aisle. Yeah, just to take a look. Bathed in pink and blue, you never knew what you were going to find. That's where I literally stumbled onto She-Ra when she was first introduced. And when there's She-Ra, there's Bo. But Bo's not the only boy toy found in the franchises of the fairer sex. I'm Victor, and straight out of the Gen experience, the male characters that rode shotgun in the most popular female franchises, the boy toys in the girls aisle. Both boys and girls toy lines would often include characters of the opposite sex, but where Tila and Lady J are well known, let's review the roster of token males found in female franchises and see just how many are familiar. It makes sense to start at the top, the Archer of the Great Rebellion and special friend to the one and only She-Ra. His heart might beat for She-Ra as his action figure blister card touted, but she kept Bo in the friend zone exactly as his tagline read. You might think, just like Barbie, there needs to be a love interest, so Bo filled that hole. But in the series, a character named Seahawk was actually better suited, but they never made a figure for him until Motu Classics. Bo is well known among the Pop and Motu fans and well-versed action figure toy collectors. His design in the show is a slight upgrade from the action figure though, where he traded his headband for some facial hair, not unlike Man-at-Arms, which I ended up drawing a mustache on my figure for him after the TV series started. I never had the Bo figure, but thanks to Magnum PI, mustaches epitomized macho of the 80s. As for the original Bo, although there was that one fleeting moment in time where the franchise went through some alternate universe, he continues to make regular appearances inspired by his classic design even today. Her star shined so bright.
She's so bright. Oh, it's like being in the presence of Barbara Streisand.
Well, probably not that bright, but Rainbow was a force to be reckoned with when she debuted in 1984. Unlike the rest of her greeting card turned mega franchise contemporaries, Rainbow Brite was designed by Hallmark and released as stationery, an animated cartoon, and merchandise all at the same time. She had power that rivaled She-Ra. With a convoluted origin befitting for 80s kids who could handle a complicated and somewhat nonsensical backstory, Rainbow Brite defeated the Dark One, brought joy back to the realm, and became the most popular girl in Rainbow Land. With her color belt, she saved the color kids, who are each in charge of their respective colors as part of the Color Council. Whew. The other rainbow representatives were Indigo, she's the attention whore, Canary Yellow, who's chill, Lala Orange, who has the worst name, Shy Violet, an obvious stereotype, Patio Green, the drunk, and then there's Red Butler. No, he didn't buttle in the traditional sense of the word. As a huge fan of classic Hollywood, his name is an homage to Rhett Butler of Gone with the Wind. But his color is red, like Vivian's Scarlett O'Hara in that harlot dress of hers during the film. Speaking of classic movies, can you hear the obvious homage to The Wizard of Oz in this vintage commercial?
He'd be snappy, he'd be giggly, he'd be happy if he only had some friends.
Lurky and Color Kids each sold separately.
How can I make some friends?
Well, unlike Rhett Butler, Red was a romantic, like Bo and She-Ra. And like Bo, this boy character helped to inject a little opposite sex point of view and personality into this all-female fever. Red's great space coaster costume design and moon boots always had me envisioning a little Ziggy Stardust. You know, like they could have finished him off with just a little extra stellar makeup on his face. Rainbow had a little face tattoo, why not Red? What do you think? But Red wasn't alone. Unlike the Princess of Power line, Rainbow had room for another boy in her ranks. This one pulls out the 80s fitness aesthetic, mashed up with Hermes, the Greek messenger god. Headband and winged shoes, Buddy Blue, the 7th color kid, was as much masculinity as this toy line was gonna muster. There must have been some boy out there whose eyes widened when learning they could get a little rainbow action without raising too many eyebrows if they got themselves a Buddy Blue or Red Butler toy. Any of you man enough to let us know in the comments? Of course, we're not going to skip the full-on fashion doll line Gem. This competition for Barbie was a short race, but for a moment, Jerrica, Gem, and their boyfriend Rio were part of one hot Hasbro property. Rio had purple hair that I questioned originally, even while each of the females had crazy colored locks. But Rio, he was all man. Definitely a more developed and interesting Ken doll. Not only does his box art reveal him as one hell of a brooding road manager, but also the epitome of style with that striped blazer and bright abstract tee underneath, or that memorable members-only jacket with pleated khakis and loafers from the cartoon. Rio Pacheco was part of the action serial that was the daily animated series, and of course was created for a love interest for at least 3 of the Gem characters, maybe even 4. The object of Pizzazz's affection from the start, however unrequited, and even Minx's later in the show, but the most important was the scandalous soap opera 2-timing triangle that was Rio, Jerrica, and Gem. Same person, you know. Once again, we Gen Xers could handle this kind of mature content. We had already proved there was nothing that could traumatize us later in life. The Gem storylines were off the rails and more interesting than any cartoon today. Rio might have been well known by many boys of the era, but owned by few to none. Okay, so this one might be a stretch, or at least one out of left field, but let's be honest. Kenner was the king of action figures since making Star Wars the most famous 3 3/4 inch figure on the market. Clamoring for some attention from the girls' toy division, they began glamouring a toy line of just slightly taller 4-inch figures with rooted hair. The most interesting thing about them at the time was their cruise liner playset. And the most interesting thing about them now is the realization that the actress in the commercial is Taylor Swift's doppelganger. Kenner's attempt to blister card some girl action figures with soft goods and plenty of accessories sounded like a great idea in 1981. Right between the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi action figures. They were miniature Barbies, and like Barbie, they needed a Ken, Todd, or Alan. But let's face it, everybody needs an Alan.
Who are you?
I'm Alan. I'm Ken's buddy. Yeah, all his clothes fit me.
And these roles would be filled with 4 male action figures, with names even. For the 7 Glamour Gals, they would have to fight over RJ, Jason, Brian, and, believe it or not, another Beau, but spelled like Beauduc. But just whose Beau, B-A-U-X, would he end up as? You decide. For a franchise that failed to land, dozens of figures and fashions were released, not to mention the cars, playsets, accessories, and more. R.I.P. boys, these short-lived toys have a bit of a following today as they were sadly overlooked options that didn't catch on, but were a good idea. So good, in fact, that Mattel, just like with Gem, rushed out their own versions to market. In the end, Mattel's Dazzle did not beat Glamour Gals to the punch, and they also didn't fare any better. Mattel was Barbie, so this should have been easy for them. But they already had their star fashion model, so Dazzle just fizzled. Now, this one's too cute, and like the Cabbage Patch Kids, they were meant for all kids, boys or girls. And just like the Cabbage Patch Kids, they found themselves either in the baby doll infantile aisle or the one for girls. The Care Bears were from American Greetings and jumped off the party invitations and cards and into 100% injected molded plastic. Now, there's nothing girly about a teddy bear. We probably all had one and loved them. But these bold Bruins came in a variety of brightly colored, sometimes pastel fur. As it were, that lent themselves to the gender norms of the time. Even though they were not intended solely for girls, fewer boys snuggled up to the likes of Funshine Bear. But their belly badges were adorbs, and if you were a boy looking to get yourself one of these new kinds of bears, complete with the heart-shaped butt button and tons of accompanying media, then you might have made sure to choose Tenderheart, Good Luck, Bedtime, Birthday, or the Eeyore-like Ursus, Grumpy Bear. The Care Bears, unlike My Little Pony, weren't afraid of co-ed habitation, depicting boy and girl bears playing and working together, sharing emotions and helping young kids navigate through their own. Care Bears have been consistent over the years and came in more than plush, but even in action figures and other merchandise. And like many of these female-centric franchises we've talked about, Care Bears have remained a steady presence on toy shelves, just like our last entry. But wait, we have one more before that. Next up is one that has never had a reboot or seen the light of day since first being canceled in 1985.
I'm gonna be Golden Girl.
If you watched my show before, you may know that Golden Girl from 1984, not to be confused with the Miami-based foursome of friends who also debuted in 1984, was a girls' toy line where the box art sold one bill of goods in the form of a sexy warrior goddess-type female character, but delivered a more typically crafted doll who wasn't winning any beauty pageants. Golden Girl wasn't bad. She debuted with a full set of figures and a playset. It never got a full cartoon series, but she did have plenty of storybooks. In those stories, you would find the boy toys, the male characters this toy line needed to diversify the adventures and complement the fortified female ranks. Prince Chroma was on the side of good, because he was blonde, I guess. And then there was Ogra, who was aligned with the evil Wild One in Vultura, because he had both black hair and a beard. There's little information on Chroma except that he was brave and daring. Pretty vanilla. Ogra at least got Scold Mask Barbarian Warlord. That was definitely more colorful. Luckily, both could ride standby with the Masters of the Universe dudes in a pinch. Mixing toy lines was always a sign of great success. Mixing between boy and girl-centric lines, now that was rare. Kinda like Golden Girl. As I promised, another success over the decades and one of the earliest. Like her Bruin brothers, Strawberry Shortcake was a creation of American Greetings, who jumped to life first as a rag doll in 1979 and then in action figure form in 1983, accompanied by playsets and accessories. I may not have been the target audience, but I was very aware of Strawberry Shortcake. Toys that smelled were ingenious to me. Along with their names and those of their pets, I was sold with that scent gimmick. I was just glad they created Huckleberry Pie and his dog Pupcake. I could actually look at them at the toy store without feeling too embarrassed, as I kinda wanted in on the fun. He looked a lot like Pete from Pete's Dragon, so it couldn't be all bad. Huckleberry Pie was a boy's only way into the world of Strawberry Shortcake. Or was he? Stay with me on this one. I get a little feisty about it, but there was once a second male character in this franchise. No, not the Purple Pie Man, but Plum Pudding. Not her, him. It's true. Quickly, someone convinced someone that there wasn't enough room in Strawberry Land for two dudes and took the already existing, already designed original Plum Pudding with his Jules Verne type short pants, hat and bow tie, sporting glasses and a pencil behind his ear, and turned this studious opposing character to Huck into this. When creating his first action figure with the rest of the gang, inexplicably, Plum was produced with longer blue hair, shortening his top, elongating the shorts into a skirt, and swapping out his shoes. Plum was already merchandised as a plush and appeared on everything from cards and wrapping paper, and even in the very first Strawberry Adventure animated cartoon in 1980. The new female Plum Pudding, who retained the original's intelligence, also stole his pet, Elderberry Owl. These little ragamuffins were not unlike Raggedy Ann and Andy or Holly Hobby in the beginning, so having another boy join these very modern little rascals would have been endearing. There was no love interests involved, just some adorable storytelling and lore that got a whole lot less diverse when Huckleberry was left the only boy, probably getting ganged up on and ridiculed and bullied by those other berry mean girls. But all was not lost. In 2020, the boy version of Plum Pudding was finally released on a scented figure along with his pals. But only in Europe, of course. Leave it to them. If you want him, it'll cost you. Or you could make your own. So much for more boy toys for Strawberry Shortcake in the toy aisles. It is well known that the boys division for famous toy companies have a struggle when selecting female figures for toy lines. G.I. Joe was not afraid with no less than 6 in the original run of A Real American Hero. The Baroness, Scarlet, Zorana, and CoverGirl were just a few, and are very well known and in demand in the market even today. Masters of the Universe ultimately had 3, although it could have even been more. It is not uncommon for a boys franchise to have female characters represented. They were necessary for pretend play. But we can't pretend all of them got the respect they deserve. Either they were shafted completely, like in The Visionaries, or afterthoughts, like Mask. The Star Wars original trilogy figures only had Princess Leia ever created. Well, until they made size Snoodles for Return of the Jedi, so I guess she counts. And surprisingly, the Thundercats line had 2. Between the boys and girls aisles, it's pretty even and proves that we're far more alike than we are different. Recently, the Loyal Subjects has brought back franchises like Rainbow Bright and Strawberry Shortcake, appearing on toy shelves everywhere. Who knows what tomorrow might bring? Let's hope for the whole range of character figures for a new generation. Or just for us collectors. Whatever. Healthy play depends on both male and female points of view for storytelling. And some of the best knew that and took a chance on characters that became classics. Well, some of them. I hope you enjoyed this show. I know I did. Click that like, and if you haven't subscribed, I think you'd appreciate it. I know I would. Check out other great shows from the era that brought you everything worth talking about today, the Gen Experience. Thanks for watching, and until next time.